This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. In my last video talking about the AFC North, I was talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and I compared them to a Ford Taurus. I don't think that's an insult. I think that's just truthfully what the Pittsburgh Steelers are. The Ford Taurus is a real grown-up car. Like if you drive a Ford Taurus, a new Ford Taurus, not like an old 98 one, but like if you drove a new Ford Taurus when new Ford Tauruses were a thing, it was assumed that you were a grown-up. You had a grown-up job. You got a grown-up living situation. You're an adult, right? That's the only impression that a Ford Taurus really makes. It's not the best car of its class, much like Pittsburgh isn't the best team in its class in many areas. There are other places you can go in that same price range to get a car that is more sporty, but not necessarily as all-round, or more reliable, but again, not necessarily as well-rounded as the Ford Taurus is. That's kind of where the Ford Taurus sat. And that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers are. They are a good team. They aren't a great team. They don't have any potential to be a great team, but they're not going to be a bad team. They're competent. They're a grown-up, competent football team. The Baltimore Ravens, it's a little bit different, right? I thought about doing a car analogy for Baltimore. I thought about maybe comparing them to the state of the video game industry, but I feel like people would interpret that as overtly negative because we view the video game industry as overtly negative. And I'm not negative on the Baltimore Ravens. And then I figured out what it is that I want to compare the Baltimore Ravens to. It's been in my hand all along. It's this. It's the iPhone. See, the iPhone is an amazing device. Your smartphone, but the iPhone specifically, this thing is spectacular. It is super reliable. It's super quick. You never think about loading anything, like it's just super quick. It has a ton of app compatibility. And if you use this within the ecosystem of Apple, it works seamlessly with every other device. And I'm a big dummy. I got all the Apple stuff. So all my stuff works great together, and I love having the iPhone for those reasons. But if you are an iPhone user or you have used the iPhone, you know that there are certain quirks of being in Apple world that are kind of annoying, especially if you experience Android. There are features that you just don't get till years later because Apple does not want to release them. Like, for example, the iPad just now got a calculator. My point is that Apple can do a lot of things. The iPhone can do a lot of things. And this thing has transformed greatly over its lifetime, right? From the first iPhone, where it was such a revolutionary concept that very few of us really were able to grasp what that would be, like what that would actually turn into, to the point to now where this is the most ordinary thing in the world. Like having a phone, pulling out a smartphone that's like the original iPhone, or, you know, a much more advanced version of it. It's not even like seen as this mind-blowing thing anymore. You know, it used to be like anybody who had an iPhone, it was like they had a spaceship in their hand. Now, this is just the number one tool we carry in our pocket. And it does a bunch of amazing things. It can be your wallet. It's your way to contact the outside world. It's your way to interface with the internet. It's your music player. It's all of these things, and it's amazing. But the thing with an iPhone, and an iPhone specifically, is sometimes they take away features. Sometimes they give you a big feature, but that takes away something else. And that's kind of what the Baltimore Ravens are. Also, another thing with the iPhone is that it's plateaued. Like this thing that I have in my hand is the iPhone, 14 Pro? And this phone has basically been slightly the same thing since they released the iPhone 10 back in 2018. It's been a faster version of the iPhone 10 or a better camera version of the iPhone 10, but smartphones have reached maturity. If you got a phone in 2020, odds are you're probably still using the phone that you got in 2020 because there's really no reason to upgrade. It used to be that you had to upgrade your phone every 1 year or every 2 years. Now I could go 4 years on this iPhone and reasonably not feel like anything's changed enough to upgrade. So the iPhone has stagnated. It's plateaued. It's already been the best it can be. And now it's just slightly falling off year by year. Maybe they add a feature, but to add that feature, they take away some features so they can bring them back later. That's where I see the Baltimore Ravens at. The Baltimore Ravens, when they first got Lamar Jackson, were spectacular. You could look at the Baltimore Ravens, you could look at what Lamar Jackson could do and get carried away about the potential of that, right? We had never seen at that point a quarterback who could move like Lamar Jackson and throw with the proficiency that Lamar Jackson does. Like, you look at the Mike Vick numbers, you look at the Lamar Jackson stuff, it's crazy what Lamar Jackson has been able to do. He's a 2-time MVP. But then you look at that roster for Baltimore and you can't help but think that they've kind of plateaued. Maybe 2019, when they went 14-2, was their iPhone 10 year, right? The year where they released the phone that would basically be the template for everything that they do. And they had a nice revision last year. You know, the iPhone, similarly, they released one with finally a USB-C charger in here instead of a Lightning charger. And that was a big upgrade. Changes how you interface with the iPhone and everything. And I think that's what last year was for the Baltimore Ravens. But ultimately, what are we getting this year with an iPhone? Same thing. Maybe they like shave off the sides a little bit so it's a little bit smoother to hold. Basically the same phone. What are we getting with the Ravens this year? Same phone. Maybe you might lose some features too if you don't upgrade to the biggest one. Similar to the iPhone, frustratingly enough. Because if you look at the Baltimore Ravens, they got a lot of shit going on. They're replacing their defensive coordinator, Mike Macdonald, with Zach Orr and Chris Hewitt. They lost Odell Beckham. They lost Jadeveon Clowney. They lost J.K. Dobbins. They lost Gus Edwards. They lost Devin Duvernay, John Simpson, Kevin Zeitler, Morgan Moses, and Pat Queen. 6 of those names that I mentioned are starters. You lost 6 starters. It's college football level turnover. 6 starters for the Baltimore Ravens from a team that went to the AFC Conference Championship game. You would expect a team that lost 6 starters, whether through trades or free agency, to be very aggressive in the draft and free agency. But they weren't. The Baltimore Ravens signed one major free agent, Derrick Henry. And that's the feature that they put on the front of the update, right? Oh, we got Derrick Henry. But they will also tell you, or at least in the small print tell you, yeah, but we lost a lot of other things. And also the reason they went out and got Derrick Henry, I don't think is for winning right now. I think it's to make up for the fact that they're losing 3 offensive linemen that used to start from it and replacing them with young, unproven players. They want a better running back so that running back can make more happen with less of an offensive line so you can get a similar result to what you've been having in the run game. I don't think that the goal is to get that much better in the Ravens run game. If it was, they would have been more aggressive with replacing their offensive line, but they let Kevin Zeitler walk. That doesn't make sense if you want your run game to get better. Maybe you can make the argument that John Simpson and Ben Cleveland are close enough to where it doesn't matter. Okay, cool. That's the argument. And maybe you feel like Morgan Moses can be replaced instantly with Roger Rosengarten. Okay, fair enough. But the loss of Kevin Zeitler, replacing him with Andrew Voorhees or Pat McCarry, that don't sound like a win-now move to me. And the Ravens, quietly, they don't really want you to get this year's edition of the Baltimore Ravens. They kind of want you to wait for a couple of years down the line. Let's bring this back to my comp on the iPhone. With the iPhone, sometimes, some years, you get the feeling that Apple really doesn't want you to get this iPhone, right? Like they're just releasing this iPhone because they release an iPhone every year. But it doesn't feel like this is the iPhone Apple wants you to get, right? Because they didn't really do much. The big upgrade was last year. Maybe in 2 or 3 years, they want you to upgrade from the one that they released last year to the one that they're going to release in 4 years. They're kind of just waiting their time. They want you to still buy an iPhone, but that isn't the one that they put a lot of their R&D into. This is the same thing with the Baltimore Ravens right now. Last year was the iPhone they want you to buy. They went to the AFC Conference Championship game. This year, it's all about adding features and adding some small things to the base product that when we release the one that we really feel like is going to be a game changer in 3 years, we all ready for it. That's what this year is for the Baltimore Ravens. And if you don't believe me, just look at who they replaced those offensive linemen with. Young players. Ben Cleveland, a young player. Andrew Voorhees, a young player. They want to see if he has it or not. Same thing with Ben Cleveland. They want to see if Ben Cleveland is good or not. They want to give him a chance to play. Roger Rosengarten, most likely going to start at right tackle, or Daniel Falele, another player that they want to see if given the opportunity can play. These don't sound like moves you make on the offensive line when your goal is to win the championship this year. These sound like moves you make when you're deciding, hey, we got all we got out that last window. Our roster is old. We need to get younger and cheaper. And to me, the Ravens scream, we're getting younger and cheaper. Yeah, we want to compete. Yeah, we want to make the playoffs now. Don't get it twisted. But we ain't really pushing all our chips in to win the Super Bowl this year. You lose Odell Beckham. Now, Odell Beckham last year was most definitely a win now signing. You wanted to upgrade at wide receiver. You got an old wide receiver who can play still a little bit in Odell Beckham. That was a win now move. Jadeveon Clowney, signing him last year, was a win now move. Now you're letting both of those guys walk. And not only are you letting both of those guys walk, you're replacing Odell Beckham with Rashad Bateman, who has not been the most consistent wide receiver, but is a wide receiver that you want to see what you got in. And the same thing can be said for Jadeveon Clowney's replacement in David Ojabo, who again, not the most consistent guy, has not been able to stay on the field. Even when he's been on the field, the results haven't been super promising, but you want to see what you got in David Ojabo. So you're going to let him play. It's kind of the theme there. Yeah, you got Calvin Noy. Yeah, you got Derrick Henry. But Derrick Henry is there not to put the Ravens over the top, but just to make sure that the Ravens stay at the status quo. Because there's a chance that offensive line with Ben Cleveland or Pat McCarry or Andrew Voorhees in the interior and Roger Rosengarten at right tackle as a rookie might stink. Even if I like Roger Rosengarten, I'm as high on Roger Rosengarten as anybody, but he's still a rookie. And rookie tackles, like it's hit or miss, especially outside the first round, whether they're going to play well in year one. Andrew Voorhees is like a 7th round pick from a couple of years ago. And Ben Cleveland is like a 4th round pick. Like these aren't the most high pedigree offensive linemen you're throwing out there. It's not like Pittsburgh where they're throwing out like 2 first-round picks and a 2nd round pick to start on the offensive line. This is a much different situation. You got Trenton Simpson replacing Pat Queen. Again, another young guy you want to see what you got in. Do these moves to you sound like a team that's trying to win a championship right now? They don't to me. They sound like a team that wants to get younger and cheaper. Maybe so that they can do something next year or the year after, but not necessarily this year. They aren't making the necessary sacrifices to be a championship team this year. And maybe this is the consequence of paying Lamar Jackson or the consequence of not wanting to spend the cash to maneuver the cap around Lamar Jackson. Who knows? But what is clear to me is that this team is not trying to win right now. Now, maybe with Zach Orr and Chris Hewitt, they want to just see what they have at defensive coordinator before they make any assumptions. A lot of what drove the Ravens' dominance last year was that defense. Similar to the Cleveland Browns, when you have a defense that good, you can get away with a lot on offense. And the Ravens did get away with a lot on offense. Zach Orr, super inexperienced. He was in the league in 2016. So there's a question of like, is he ready for this kind of role? I think that's why Chris Hewitt is there. He's been on the coordinating staff since 2020, not as an official offensive or defensive coordinator, but in unofficial official roles like assistant head coach and pass defense coordinator. It's a weird system they got there in Baltimore, but it does work. So that's what Baltimore is throwing out there. Like when you zoom out and you're not looking closely at Baltimore, it looks amazing. They went to the AFC Conference Championship game last year and they added Derrick Henry. But when you zoom in and you see that they lost so many key pieces to that run, especially on a already depleted offensive side, and they did not replace those people with upgrades. They just kind of gave some young dudes a chance. Sure, that can work out, but I don't know if that's the best strategy for a team that wants to convince you that they're trying to win right now. 3 young offensive line replacements. And then you also have to talk about Ronnie Stanley, who has not been the same since his multiple injuries. I talked about it when it happened. I know Raven fans got mad at me, but ended up being right about this. Those 300-pounders, man, you can't just write off the lower extremity injuries. Those are serious. At 300-plus pounds, you got to take those seriously. You don't recover from those the same as like a 230-pound running back. So you already got a little bit of a question mark in Ronnie Stanley. You're replacing pretty much all your offensive line outside of Ronnie Stanley and your center. So you got like one dude on that offensive line you can trust. My question is, hey, man, what if those trenches don't form the way that Baltimore wants them to? What if they cannot block at the level that you need to, especially in the AFC North, where defensive lines are galore, especially if you're the Baltimore Ravens, because you don't play on one of those teams with a monster defensive line. Everybody else does. You know, when you play Cincinnati, they're throwing Trey Hendrickson at you. They're throwing Sheldon Rankins at you. When you play Pittsburgh, they're throwing TJ Watt at you. They're throwing Alex Highsmith and Cam Hayward at you. And now they're also adding Pat Queen into that rotation. When you play the Cleveland Browns, you're getting Myles Garrett. You're getting Zadarius Smith. You're getting Obo Okoronkwo. You're getting Dalvin Tomlinson. You're getting Maurice Hurst. You're getting Shelby Harris. This is not the division to play a bunch of young guys on the offensive line and think that stuff's going to be sweet. You're going to run through the division. And with a running back like Derrick Henry, who does kind of rely on being able to get to that outside edge, I wonder if that's going to be a strategy that holds up. With a team that is so deficient at wide receiver like Baltimore is, I wonder like if not having a couple wide receivers who can just win straight up off the ball in man coverage, like if that's going to help you. I don't know if I don't think that's a good thing for Baltimore, that they also like they have a questionable offensive line and questionable wide receivers. It seems like it's going to be real easy to kind of pigeonhole them into doing one or two things. And I feel like they're asking Lamar Jackson to carry as heavy of a load as he's ever had to carry in his career with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, he's always had great defenses, but offensively, I mean, like you look at this one and you have to say, like, at least in 2019, he did not have great wide receivers. In 2020, he did not have he's never had great wide receivers, but he always had a good offensive line. I don't know what this looks like to me. And that's why I think the Baltimore Ravens remind me of the iPhone. I don't think this is a year where I would want to buy the iPhone. I think this is a year where I'm like, you know what? I'll see you next October to see what you're releasing then. Because this one ain't it. This one ain't it. You took away the headphone jack. You ain't got 3D touch in there. Like all these features you took out and you did not replace. And then I'm good. I'll wait for next year's model. And I think that's what this year is for Baltimore. I don't think they're going to stink. But I also don't think this is going to be a year where they're going to be in the ones. Like, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to win at least 10 games. They're going to be a good team. But I think their ceiling isn't as high as it was last year. I think their opportunity was last year. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.